Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the Dream Labs with Dr. Contrast. I am live. And I just want to, before I begin here in this study, I just want to make a quick announcement. I really do apologize for the early start today. I've got an appointment I have to attend here this afternoon, so I want to make sure we program in today. Interesting thing, I just want to discuss here. Started this program about maybe 3-4 months ago, and it was a Star Citizen study on the interdiction fighter, Escort fighter. And when I back to it, looked at it over the last week or so since our last stream, and I began to notice that it was an interesting concept, but it didn't have the, I don't think it had the character punch that it should have had. This whole concept of biomimicry, which is where you take an example from the natural world, one or four, and really put together parts about converting that piece into a visible product of something. In this case, it's an aircraft. So I selected, for example, very unusual, I think, product world, Hammerhead Shark, and it comes from the family of the Genesis, or the species of Mimicry. Interesting, I think that's the Genesis that I thought, look at this thing one more time, and I want to go through today, very briefly here, but yet thoroughly, sketch development, went through concept of discussion today, talking about what I'm going to do to make some changes on this thing. I'm going to reinvent this thing because I really wasn't happy with it. Far too soft. I said it wasn't critical enough. It wasn't evil looking. I mean, evil in a sense it was foreboding, but just looked like weaponly enough. So I went back in and looked at all the sketches. I brought them all together here today. And today's whole plan is to go back into this whole thing and give you an outline of where I've been, and I'm going to take a look at this thing for next Wednesday stream and start attacking conceptual, getting a lot more aggressive with the actual shapes and stuff. So that's the premise of today, and I'm really, really the early start. There's a question I can't avoid this. I just want to make sure I got this stream in to introduce you to the whole idea of the Star Citizen attack vehicle. Take a look at and repackage it more of a substantial look, sinister looking machine, also something soft and here we go. I started out with just very simple thumbnail sketches here, and I'll go down the line here, go from sketch to sketch. Again, the hammerhead, and its actual species name is Mimicry. I'm going to call this, I don't know if I'm going to call that the name of the actual fighter, but that's the Genesis it belongs in. So a very quick little simple sections together, and a very bold looking hammerhead on this thing. Tear it all out. So here I went to on elevations, for example, the body form, taking off some pylons, using the head form and just breaking it down a little bit, get a little more aggressive with the shape itself. Went back, 3 little studies here that went back to just very quickly, graphic form what it looked like. Lo and behold, this is done some time ago. I started here, and there were some 2 sketches. I started to see something with a little bit more character. That's the genesis of start this whole. You know, what we do with this guy. Went back first elevation, pretty soft. Same thing with the bulbous with the actual hand. Them up front. Graphics and the initial concept I want. Getting maybe a dual cockpit system up front, and a real tapered body, and then cockpit gunner system rear of the vehicle. So it started here, but then again, this one, A and B, 2 quick graphic forms, a little aggressive look. Might be a seed to work with and go down the line here in the actual process of putting together. So I'm gonna move this out of the way. Go down the line, and I went back and put it again into a plan view study with this very obviously strong dominant part of the shape itself. Again, body form a little bit too fluid. Maybe we can expand this thing, widen this out a little bit, or else taper it, and also the edge. Went to a front view here, elevation, looking at some scale, and I'm looking at possibly the rework here of maybe the idea concept across on the print scale of the F-35 is the Lightning, and also the Y-22 Raptor light. That same overall size, but a little sinister look. So I went from plan to a little bit of an elevation, again into another front elevation, to this. And it was interesting. I thought, well, if the visual systems, the eyes and the hammerhead are out on the board of the flanks, maybe being to come back and pilot modules on the outboard ends of the wing and create some sort of end system. That would be a dual process pilot, co-pilot, but they're not behind the gunner, one behind the other. It's kind of a spread out here to separate the pilot and the co-pilot. So then I went from that into a plan view, and the module, the pilot module out on the end caps, but it was a little bit flat, so I got the hammerhead part. It looked a little flat yet. Enough character, body, or intake, exhaust. So then we went from there and back into a series of pencil sketches. Just looking at elevation. This is that idea here. Cockpit. Then again, the body form in the middle. It didn't have the same overall form that the hammerhead had. Opened up that pilot on the corners on the outboard ends of these wing structures. That becomes a design process. Again, a little study of the Shark itself. Elevation and elevation. Again, this pod here would be here. So there was a beginning there of an idea of saying, okay, maybe we take a little bit of an avant outside the box thinking, but I think when I went back to it, that's exactly what I want to develop now. The next couple of weeks or so, the next session. So back to that character that looks more fighter type and more aggressive looking. Study here, cockpit, pilot, co-pilot being on the outboard ends of the wings. And back in his third sketch with review sketch of the actual body form itself. I mean, these cantilever points, and again, the cockpit on the outboard ends of the wings, pilot, co-pilot, or vice versa, intake system, and then to exhaust. It had some interesting shapes to it. Still didn't have a hammerhead look. But I began to look at this and say, it's interesting. Maybe by reversing this thing around, and putting this unit up front might be interesting to look at it. Again, this is strictly review here today in terms of where I want to take this next step doing the poke around Star Citizen Intervention Fighter. Again, real quick sketches here. And then we're back into this again. Ready? Looking at the elevation, a little bit of perspective, a little rounder, almost disc-like pieces, and just it still didn't have a bit too friendly. Interesting idea of separating the pilot, but that same kind of interest is healthy look attack bomber fighter. So a lot of sketches, a lot of exploration, a lot of time spent on getting the basic theme down of trying to go from mimicry with a hammerhead shark into a fighter system. Didn't come easy. That was a part of the fun of it. But one way or the other, and I think over the course of time, we might get into some situations next week where we really get much more, I hate to use the term so much, it's common, stealth-like, very crisp, very aggressive looking, a lot of surface changes, and a lot of little module pieces inside the body form itself that kind of look like a formidable attack fighter. So let's move along here. I went back to plan view studies here, and looking at possibility of, again, notice we're starting to get more of the hammerhead look up front, more of the hammerhead look up front, and front. It's a little bit short, a little bit too squat. Maybe we stretch a little bit. I'm not sure yet if that's go with this. Again, these three plan view sketches, other than this one, had that same idea of pods out here, but co-pilot. I'm not sure if that's still going to be. Maybe we tighten it up a little bit. Start out for the body form, the rest of the shapes, but might be the way to go. But I think for the Explorer, still on the fence whether full cockpit on board or else outboard them. The theme put together here. Start doing some concept work next week. And once again, for the purposes of review, this is an overview of where I have been, where I did in the past. And I read back and looked at it this week, and I thought, you know what? Interesting idea, but I already captured it. I can really make some design changes here, a whole new format theme, and take it from, again, second generation of concept sketches into a nice finished illustration and get a website in the store. So again, study a little bit more of this. This became an interesting look here when I started looking at This would be the front of the vehicle. I would put the cockpit right center of the machine here, and these outriggers for the gunning systems, mission systems. Interesting start. In the plan view, it started looking interesting, and it still didn't have that overhead look to it. Maybe we reverse that again, put this out front, and then bring this rearward in the gunning position. Prediction system. This was interesting, but it started looking more like a B-2 bomber. Didn't have that same feel as Mocharon. I think the span of this worked into a body form could be interesting, and I'm just hearing what I feel to be history of this. Maybe now next week, maybe pick out a few sketches and start with that program next week. We looked at this, and this, and we're going to take some of these elements and begin to massage them into a body form. This whole concept of the Mocharon. I'm not sure that's going to be the name yet, but the species of the shark we're dealing with, it's Sphyrna Mocharon. There we go. Now, this is interesting. Started here, coming off of this, coming off of this sketch where we have this very large span up front, but it's pretty short and abbreviated. And again, pushing it all forward. Maybe I take this sketch and reverse it, flip the elements. Engine nacelles at the rear, pilot up front, and gunnery system up front. So I just flip this thing, and the next series of sketches will see simple theme. Now notice, this is interesting. I kept it foreground, pilot area, and the Mocharon and attack area. Takes an idea. But again, is it the right approach? If it's too forward, not enough of this happening up front to give it that whole character in the Mocharon. And while I'm at it too, I don't know, be very, very transparent with you. No idea. Maybe if we get rid of that whole cantilever up front, hold them out in two pods and give you the illusion that it's at Hammerhead. But it's not really quite directly related to the actual shark itself, the Hammerhead. So this is where it started. Now I started moving sketches here where all of a sudden, this is where it all started. Notice we get that form, cockpit rearward. A little bit of a study here in terms of cockpit rearward, and all the gunnery systems and engine and modular systems up front in a different attack view. And view of that guy started to make some sense. All of a sudden, that's interesting. We got that up front, body form rear, and in the cockpit, the rear end of the high-mounted system in the cockpit, the whole module down below, much more hammered. Let's see what happens here. That kind of turned the page from as far as concept. But again, it was still a bit too friendly. That's, again, the purpose of the stream. To look at this thing, give it a real good overview, pick some things out of the elements that we're going to deal with. Really get this thing to really crank at it. So here we go. I'm going to keep moving here. Another set of sketches. Now, back to this whole idea of foot cockpit itself. Again, it voids the whole Hammerhead look up front, but is that the right approach? Does it all go rearward? Do we put the pilot and co-pilot out front? It's a different format. This could be interesting if handling the right processes. Something about that feel that the new variation that we're going to work on might have that whole concept of being dual cockpits spread out and body form in between, and a fuselage body form supporting that. Remember, substrate. But I'm not going to give up on that yet. I still if you resolve it the right way, right character, it could be an interesting concept and a whole new look for interdiction fighters. Is it possible to have the cockpits? Yeah, I think so. If we keep them wide apart, or else we move it a little bit. But there is something intriguing about this area here. Maybe we push forward and give it that same look in between, and I can cantilever, bring the wings rearward, but a whole new look. That's the idea behind the process, giving it a whole new look. Concept study. This one I thought started to take some merit. Now we're getting close. It's getting this cantilever process out front, and again, pilot, co-pilot. A bit too thin. Maybe those are spherical or a little bit bolder. Got some character behind stuff in terms of getting the shapes come together. And notice again, notice the contour through the center line here. Spark-like or fluid-like.